Guys, welcome back to the early line here on SportsGrid. Davis Mattek and Mark Zinno. And obviously, as we end the 2023-24 NFL season, we have to look ahead to 2024. We've got an incredibly exciting NFL draft coming up. I think that this is one of the more transformative NFL drafts that we're going to have in this, decade. We've got two quarterbacks who are locked in to go with the first and second picks, although I don't think a lock to go to the teams right now who are picking first and second. We are 73 days away from the NFL draft. I certainly think the Bears trading out of that pick. Maybe the Commanders trade up to one for that pick because they have their guy and they don't want to risk it. I certainly think the Patriots could trade out of the third pick. Maybe they don't want Jane Daniels. Maybe they don't want to pay that price for Marvin Harrison Jr. Certainly it has been the Patriots' way to trade down. So Zeno, we are going to take a look at the board for Super Bowl odds for the next NFL season. The 49ers are, of course, everyone loves the 49ers. They are favored at plus 450 to win the Super Bowl. Most intriguing price for me on the board right now, it's got to be the Bengals sitting there at 15-1, coming off what was just basically a lost season for them. What do you make of the odds board right now?
Well, I'm a glutton for punishment, so I'm still going to take the Bills at 12-1. And eventually believe that Josh Allen is going to get over the hump because I believe he's good enough to get over the hump. The Cowboys are interesting. They're going to be in the conversation. The Eagles are interesting. They're going to be in the conversation. But, I keep going back to the Ravens and Bills as the teams that I really think that could be the ones that are good enough to knock off the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, look, there's two philosophies here, right? Don't take an AFC team that's not the Chiefs because it doesn't look like anybody's going to beat them because you're just wasting your money, right? As we've seen. I bet against the Chiefs with the Bills and lost. I bet against the Chiefs with the Ravens and lost. So, the logic is take an NFC team because at least they only have to face the Chiefs once, and hopefully it's a coin flip kind of game where they can pull it out and win it. The other logic is that find the team you think in the AFC can beat the Chiefs because they're going to have longer odds and you're going to get better value, right? Like that's – the odds makers are not going to make somebody a favorite over the Chiefs unless the Chiefs start out and start really bad, and end up having to move the lines a little bit. So I would take the philosophy that I think the Ravens and Bills are the two teams that could beat the Chiefs, and those are the ones I would play.
I definitely agree with the Ravens. I mean, the Ravens very easily could have won the AFC Conference Championship if Todd Monken, didn't just completely lose his mind. I still don't really understand. Now, there's actually some good reporting about this. A couple guys over at The Athletic talked to some coaches, and there's a little bit of you definitely used to see this happen against the Patriots in the playoffs back in the day, which would just be teams would just lose their minds playing against them because the pressure is so great. I will never understand it, why being in that spot just makes you want to play worse. It seems very bizarre to me, but it's definitely something that happened. I think it is pretty inarguable. I'm interested if we see any Dolphins steam heading into next year. They're going to make some acquisitions to improve their offensive line. I am not a Dolphins believer, but there is no doubting that for a period, they did have the best offense in the NFL. What do you think about the Dolphins?
I wouldn't take a team to win the Super Bowl that isn't the team they're the best team in their own division. That's just flawed logic. You're going to have to go on the road in the playoffs and win games. So I would only pick a team that I think is the very best in their division because they're at least guaranteed a home playoff game that gives me a chance, again, in a one-on-one matchup, i.e. in the NFC Championship or AFC Championship game, that you have to go on the road and win a football game. I don't believe the Dolphins are the best team in the AFC East. I still think that's the Buffalo Bills. I think the Bills proved that this year. So I'm not going to bet the Dolphins to do anything other than make the playoffs because that's what I think their limit is.
Yeah, I think that is pretty fair. The Bengals would be the team for me because they're the one team that still exists as a core that has proven that they can beat the Chiefs. The Bills haven't done it in the playoffs. The Ravens haven't done it in the playoffs. The Dolphins haven't done it in the playoffs. But the Bengals went into Arrowhead and won that game. Not a big Zach Taylor fan, but I am. Joe Burrow is
Me
either. But Joe Burrow
has gotten better, but I think he holds them back. I think he really genuinely does not make that team better.
Yeah. All right. My biggest hot take in the NFC this upcoming season, it's the Green Bay Packers. I think that what the Green Bay Packers did this season went a little bit overlooked. Now, obviously, they end up losing in the playoffs, but they were the youngest team in the NFL. They had no wide receiver who was older than 24 years old. The veteran of their wide receiver room was second-year player Christian Watson, who spent half the year out with a hamstring. And this was the year for the Packers to have to pay the piper. They still owed money on Rodgers' deal after trading him. They still owed money on Adams' deal after trading him. They moved. Basically, they did it in such a way that they knew this was going to be the painful year against the cap. They were going to do as much as they could to clear dead money this year and then start to kind of rebuild things next season. They've got some older guys who are going to be moving on the offensive line. They're going to have a ton of cap space. And they're in this really unique situation where, like, they have a bunch of great pass catchers who are all getting paid like nothing. Dontavian Wicks getting paid nothing. Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, Bo Melton, Romeo Doubs. All these guys are getting paid like nothing. They can make a couple marquee free agent acquisitions. And I look at that division, and I don't mean any disrespect to the Detroit Lions, but if you said you can start a franchise with one quarterback, Jordan Love or Jared Goff, I'm taking Jordan Love. Now, again, big fan of Dan Campbell, maybe not so much Matt LaFleur. I think Matt LaFleur is a little bit more in that Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan, too conservative with the fourth downs, with the clock type stuff, whereas I think Dan Campbell's the exact opposite. I think Dan Campbell's about as good as it gets in terms of, knowing when and how to be aggressive in those spots. But I think that when Jared Goff's your quarterback, you've got a real ceiling, kind of similar to how I think the 49ers have a ceiling, with Purdy, where everything's got to be laid out in such a way. What do you make of the Packers at 25-1 to win the Super Bowl next season?
I mean, yes, I think that there's a world where they are the best team in their division. I mean, if you're the Lions right now and you're betting on them, like, there's only really one direction you can go, and that's down, right? Like, it's hard, it's going to be very hard for them to get back to the NFC Championship game again. A lot of things had to fall their way. And, oh, by the way, can we just hit a rewind button here? Remember when the Jacksonville Jaguars last year's playoffs, almost beat the Chiefs? Do you remember that? Remember when all that happened? That was in the AFC divisional playoff game, right? Yeah, right? And they almost beat the Chiefs because what happened in the game before? Oh, that's right. Brandon Staley and the idiot Chargers, who was a putz, blew a 27-point lead and let them get back in a game they had no business winning. So then all of a sudden we think the Jaguars are good because they were able to hang with the Chiefs for a half and go win a game. What happened this year? Oh, we realized the Jaguars regressed because they weren't that good to begin with. There is very much a world where the Lions, who, oh, by the way, and I've said this 100 times on this network, on plenty of shows that I've been on, including In Game Live, they should not have beat the Rams. If Sean McVay wasn't a moron, they do not beat the Rams and are not in the NFC Championship game. So think about that next year when all of their lines are overinflated because they went to the NFC Championship game and their win total was at 12.5. They take the under. You heard it here first. Take the under and fade the Lions because they're good, but they're not NFC Championship game good on the regular yet. That's not them. So they're going to be overpriced and overinflated because they won 2 games and in reality, there's an argument they didn't deserve to win either one of them. Am I wrong in that assessment, Davis?
No, you are 100% right. In fact, I took the Rams in that game, and in all these, playoff contests that I'm doing, I was loaded up on Rams. I had like Rams skill position players in these playoff fantasy contests. I really thought they'd win that game. And honestly, I think like McVay is the ultimate. 80% of what he brings to the table is like as good as it gets. And then the 20% that he takes off of it completely ruins the meal because he might be the worst coach in the NFL with clock and game, situational management. I never really understood why he's not grown in that respect. We're going to go ahead and run at a break here real quick on the program. Some more NBA when we return. Don't go anywhere.